When you hear a pilot grumpy on the radio say something like this,
put this on the books. We're going around because of them, and we're going around.
You might think, why is he so irritated? So let's see how he got there.
Pipeline 12521, just let me know when you guys are getting ready to cross the final for runway 22 left. Traffic's 8 to the northeast, descending out of 3,737.
Okay, I'm continuing, and I'll look at that traffic. I'll let you know when I get close. I'll probably have to pass right beneath it and then head southbound at this altitude, though.
Roger, yeah, just look out for that traffic. They're at your 12 o'clock, 5 miles opposite direction, 3,000, descending 737.
521 looking.
First, we're going to set the scene of exactly what's going on here. This first plane that's talking with air traffic control looks like this. This is a Cessna 172, which is a plane that a lot of new pilots learn on. When you're flying pipeline, and it's almost a job that I got in West Texas, but I didn't get it because I didn't have enough flight time at that time. But what you're doing is you're flying along a pipeline. For example, in Texas, you're flying along oil pipelines, and you're looking for leaks. In different parts of the US, you might be doing things like flying along power lines and looking for trees that are growing on a power lines. You could be doing a bunch of different stuff, but that pipeline flying is you usually building your time because you don't have enough flight time to get a job that you really want or go to the airlines or fly for a corporate company. So what you'll do is you'll fly pipeline and you're able to build a lot of flight time that way. The quality of the time though is not really great. What I mean by that is you're building flight hours, which is good, and you need that experience in order to be able to get hired, but you're flying usually in the daytime, always in the daytime, in clear skies, and you're not really doing anything except just looking out your window to make sure that there's nothing that's down. That doesn't really develop your skills or grow your skills as a pilot generally. So I've seen sometimes where people build a lot of pipeline time and they might have 3,000 hours of pipeline time, but they really struggle if you put them in a different environment that requires your ability to fly in instruments, meaning in bad weather, things like that, because it's not something that they have any experience in doing. So this is the arrival in the Midway, which is where this is taking place in Chicago. And in this plane right here, we have a less experienced pilot that's probably trying to build flight time. And something I want to say for all the newer pilots that are watching this, as you watch this video, realize that every airline pilot and every pilot that's flying a big jet has at one time been a newer pilot with less experience. They've all been there, whether they act like they've been there or not, they have been in this pilot's shoes before with this amount of flight time. The traffic that the air traffic controller is referencing is flying in here in the Midway, which I've flown into many times. I should probably say this because I know people are going to mention it. I did not fly in there on a 747, even though I would like to. If we ever go apocalyptical in this world, I will try it. But I used to fly in there all the time when I was flying regional jets. But this is the chart for Midway. And you can see there are a lot of runways, but they're very short. All that means when you're landing on a short runway is that you don't have a lot of time to float down the runway. You've heard me talking about a plane floating before, meaning they're not managing their power correctly. And so when you're landing on a really short runway, a lot of times if you're a passenger, you'll notice it's kind of a stiff landing. And that's because it's very important that you land exactly where you need to land and stop in time. So a pilot would rather take a harder landing to get the plane stopped than have a nice soft landing and go off the end of the runway. This plane that's coming in is planning to land here on 22 left, and you'll notice this marking right here indicates a displaced threshold. What that means is there's a portion of that 6,445 foot runway that is not usable by the pilots for landing. You can be used for takeoff, but not for landing. So when air traffic control says this,
Pipeline 12521, just let me know when you guys are getting ready to cross the final for runway 22 left. Traffic's 8 to the northeast, descending out of 3,737.
He's talking to the Cessna, which we're going to show here with this white plane. And he's telling them that there's some pilots that are coming in a 737 that they're going to be flying an approach. And so he wants to know when this pilot in the white plane wants to cross this section right here. And the pipeline pilot understands and responds and says this.
Okay, I'm continuing, and I'll look at that traffic. I'll let you know when I get close. I'll probably have to pass right beneath it and then head southbound at this altitude, though.
This is where the controller should step in if they felt like there could be a potential conflict. Because what the pipeline pilot is saying is, as we're going to go down there, we'll maintain this altitude, which I think they're around 1,200 feet. They'll maintain this altitude here and we'll cross down that way. But what the pipeline pilot will be comfortable with and what an airline pilot will be comfortable with may not be the same thing. And I sense there's some hesitation from the controller, but he says this.
Just look out for that traffic. They're at your 12 o'clock, 5 miles, opposite direction, 3,000, descending 737.
The controller is telling this pilot, I need you to find this other plane in the sky because once you see them visually, I want you to maintain visual separation. That is airline speak or pilot speak for I want you to see that plane and then not hit that plane in the air by being able to keep an eye on it. That's essentially what he's telling the pilot. He's going to put the responsibility on that pilot. As soon as that pilot can see the other plane, now he's responsible for staying away from that other plane. But the one thing that this pilot says that I really like is right here.
521 looking.
The reason that I like that is because when air traffic control tells a pilot, hey, I need you to find this other plane, sometimes I'll hear pilots on the radio say things like, oh, I see him on my screen or things like that. Unless you can physically see it in the real world by looking outside of your plane, then it doesn't count. So by saying that you can see it on your screen, on your plane, on your display, where it shows all the other planes around you, that means nothing, so there's no reason to even say that. Unless you can physically see it, it doesn't count. So this pilot, I don't know if they have that screen where it shows the other traffic, but they're saying, okay, we're looking outside the plane, we're looking for this other aircraft. So that is the right response in that situation, which shows that the pilot is looking outside and doing what they're supposed to be doing.
521 traffic inside.
91 Mondo 22 left.
Pipeline 12521, maintain visual separation with that traffic and caution lake turbulence.
Thank you. Maintain visual custom lake 521.
Southwest 391, Medway Tower traffic, 12 o'clock, 3 miles, northeastbound, 1,200 of pipeline, correction, at Cessna. They have you on site. They are maintaining reservation with you. Runway 22 left, clear to land.
22 left, clear to land, look for traffic, Southwest 391.
The pipeline pilot sees a 737, which is easier. Usually when you're lower on the ground, looking up against the sky, you only have really two colors. Generally, you have blue for the sky and gray for the clouds. So it's a little bit easier to see a plane that's purple and orange versus when you're in a plane looking down, you have a lot of different colors on the ground, white buildings and red buildings and cars. So there's a lot more that's moving. It's hard to find a much smaller plane that's going along the ground than it is from being in a small plane looking up at the sky. But the controller is saying, hey, this small plane sees you, you look for that plane, but they're going to stay away from you. That's kind of like saying you can keep doing exactly what you were planning to do, and their responsibility is to stay away from you. That doesn't really mean anything if they mess up and they hit you. Well, you still had a collision in flight, but that's essentially what the controller's saying here. So based on the transmission, it sounds like the Cessna is right here and directly facing the 737, which is right here, and they're 3 miles apart. And they're about to turn in this final turn to go land on the runway. You can already see how this is going to be a problem because the landing phase of flight is a high workload time for the pilots. The pilots are having to get ready to land and do all the normal checks that they're responsible for doing while one pilot is flying, keeping their eye on a very short runway, making sure that they maintain their power management correctly so they're able to land specifically where they need to land so they can stop in time, while another pilot is probably looking out the window trying to find the other plane so that way they can maintain their own visual separation from it. So they want to both see each other so that way that there's no conflict. But you can already see how this is going to turn into a problem. Listen what happens next.
Pipeline 521, just remain north of that traffic.
Yeah, I'm swinging north of the canal now. 521.
Traffic inside, Southwest 391, responding, getting back on quiet.
Southwest 391, roger. And disable runway 22 left, that lane.
Alright, disable 22 left, clear land, we did have an RA.
Roger.
No, we're not going to. Put this on the books. We're going around because of them, and we're going around.
Southwest 391, roger. Maintain 3,000, fly runway heading for now.
3,000, runway heading, Southwest 391. Happens way too often.
Pipeline 521, heading southbound now.
Pipeline 521, roger.
I like how the pipeline pilot's like, okay, cool, I'm just going to keep doing my thing over here.
Pipeline 521, heading southbound now.
So here's what happened. You have the 737 has a system, it's called TCAS, Traffic Collision Avoidance System. And that system basically is looking for all the other planes that are around you, creating a bubble, if you will. And it looks at the trend of what the aircraft you're in is doing and lets you judge what's around you. So now this pilot could be in the small plane, could be 1,000 feet below this other plane, the 737. And if that 737 was flying in level flight, the traffic collision avoidance system wouldn't care. But because that plane is descending, it's sensing, okay, this is getting too close for comfort, and now it's going to alert the pilot and give them what's called a RA, a resolution advisory. That is what the pilot is saying at this point without fully saying it.
Southwest 391, responding.
The full phrase that you would say is responding to an RA, which is basically meaning you're following the instructions that your plane is giving you to keep you away from other traffic. So that resolution advisory might tell the pilots climb, or it could tell them something, which basically is keeping their plane away from this other aircraft. So when you hear this very excited Southwest pilot say this,
responding, getting back on quiet.
he is telling air traffic control, which is absolutely the right thing to do, hey, we were responding to an RA, so now we're in a different situation than what we were planned to be in. So it's basically like, I'm not doing anything that I'm not supposed to be doing. We're following the instructions from our plane, and then he's letting air traffic control know, hey, we're not doing what we were originally planning to do, and we're doing this other thing because you put us too close to this other aircraft, and we have to follow the instructions of what our plane is telling us to do. As this plane is descending, they're following this path to get down to the runway. But if as they're going down, the plane sees this other plane pop up here, which is the Cessna, it's going to tell the pilots, stop descending, which is exactly what the Southwest pilots did. They did exactly the right thing. They stopped descending and followed the instructions. And the controller saw this coming as well. You heard him tell the Cessna pilot, make sure you stay north of the plane. He saw that this was going to be a problem. Listen here.
Plane 521, just remain north of that traffic.
So the controller was hoping that Cessna pilot was to stay far enough north and away from the plane so that way the TCAS system wouldn't get triggered and wouldn't tell the pilots to stay away from that plane by climbing or whatever instruction that TCAS system gave the pilots at that time. But you don't want to have the TCAS system from this 737 look at this white Cessna down here and think, yeah, you can probably make it. That's not how it's designed. It just analytically looks at the information and says, that's too close for comfort, so maintain your speed or climb. Now then the controller says, if able, land on 22 left, because now the controller can see these pilots have descended or changed the descent rate, so they're not continuing the descent at the normal glide path to get down to that runway, and because it's such a short runway, it's going to be a lot harder for them to land and safely stop. Because when you are dealing with a runway that's this short, you have to be very precise in where you land. If you've had to balloon up your plane or maintain your altitude and now have to dive back down, you've messed up your energy management. Could you catch up and make it work? Yeah, you absolutely could. And probably if you were in the sim just messing around with your friends, you could absolutely land. It wouldn't be any problem. However, it's definitely not ideal to do that. And if something goes wrong and you were to mess up and come in too fast or land too long or have any type of an incident, what would happen is they would look over everything that happened, and then they'd look at how you controlled the plane, the decisions that you'd make, and what they would say is, why would you make that decision? We'd rather you just go back up and burn some extra gas and come back in and safely land, not do this. And that's why I'm guessing this is the captain here.
We're going around because of them.
So the Southwest pilots did everything right. They complied with the RA, they let air traffic control know that they were complying with an RA, and that's why they weren't continuing on the glide path down. Then they considered for a second about continuing to land and getting back on the glide path to come into the runway there. But then at the end, the captain, I'm guessing, decided, hey, we're not going to do that. We're going to do a go-around. So everything that they did was correct. Now, from the pipeline pilot, as the pipeline pilot is flying around, they're looking up and seeing, okay, I have plenty of distance. I'm nowhere near that plane. The problem is the Southwest pilots don't have glass beneath their feet, so they can't see what the other pilot is doing down there. And so if the plane tells them, hey, you need to do something different with the resolution advisory, they have no choice. But obviously this pilot is very irritated by this.
No, we're not going to. Put this on the book.
When I was a new pilot, I would be happy to do a go-around because I was just trying to build flight time. But when you're an airline pilot, you no longer really care about the number of hours that you have. You have enough flight time to be at the job that you want to be at, so you're not really caring about the hours. You just want to land. Midway is a big base for Southwest, so maybe this pilot is on their final leg after a long trip and they're just ready to go home, and this extra 20 minutes might put them in rush hour traffic. I don't know. Obviously, they're irritated about it, but if you are a pipeline pilot and you're listening to this, you might feel bad. The reality is as long as you learn from this experience, it doesn't really matter. Every airline pilot has had to build time, and all of them have probably done something stupid in their career. But now you know if this plane is coming in, you'd rather just stay further to the north. That way you can let this plane go down because we can't see what's beneath us. So instead of creating for us to do a go around, you can take an extra 10 or 15 seconds and stay away from us and then come in right behind. It wouldn't be a big deal, but I don't think the pipeline pilot did anything intentional to create a problem, and I don't think they really did anything wrong. They were following the instructions of air traffic control and maintaining the visual separation, so they were doing everything they were supposed to be doing, and they can't really know if the TCAS system is going to alert these other pilots, but it's always better just to give it an extra 10 or 15 seconds and then fly in right behind them.
721 Foxtrot Lima, could you change runway 16 left?
I can change 16 left, 721 Foxtrot Lima.
Okay, 16 left, 16 left, clear to land.
Clear to land, 16 left.
1 Foxtrot Lima, need you down.
Do the best I can, you get me a long landing.
1 Foxtrot Lima, sir, I need you down, I have to go around. 1 Foxtrot Lima, go around.
I'm going around, why don't you leave me on the right side then?
So this pilot that was coming into land was originally expecting 16 right. He was planning to land here, but the controller asked if he could switch just a little bit over onto 16 left. Now that's not too uncommon of a request. I've had it happen in my airline career. I think I've even had it happen on the 747. It's not very common, but sometimes they might have a plane that they think, oh, we can get this other plane out. You can just slide this other plane over one runway. They can land there. They can keep everything moving more efficiently. And they'll ask you, hey, can you move over to this runway? You have the right to not do it. You can say, no, I can't do it. Realize by saying that, there's two potential things that could happen. If you say, no, I can't do it, air traffic control could tell you to hold or go around or whatever. If you agree to do it and you get to the other runway and you mess something up, well, that's 100% on your responsibility. So you kind of have to judge based on listening to everything that's going around. Do you need to do it or do you not need to do it? And if you don't do it, is it going to create a bunch of extra time for you or not? And it's a little bit hard until you get enough experience. But if you get asked, hey, can you do this? And you're a newer pilot or you don't feel really comfortable, just realize you don't have to take what they're asking you to do. You can say, no, I need to land on this runway. And they can either say, well, go around and come back around and we'll try it again, which is totally fine. Or, like I said, if you feel good enough to slide over there, then just go ahead and slide over. But then you hear the controller telling the pilot that he needs him to get down and land.
1 Foxtrot Lima, need you down.
It sounds like this pilot is intentionally floating down the runway, and this is a very long runway. This runway is almost double the length of the one at Midway earlier, and this pilot is probably parking down in this area down here. So listen to when he says he's going to land long.
Do the best I can, you get me a long landing.
A long landing is when instead of landing in the first third of the runway and the first couple thousand feet of the runway, you say you're going to land towards the end of the runway. And so that's going to really save you maybe 2 or 3 minutes because you're getting to fly a little bit longer instead of taxiing on the ground at a normal slower speed. So you're going to save 1 to 2 minutes in the grand scheme of everything. So instead of landing in this part right here, they're planning to land in this part right here. So we're talking about really a very minimal time savings. And the problem is that if you land at the very end of that runway and something were to go wrong, like you hit some oil slick or who knows what, and you slide off the end of the runway, which happens, then you're going to have to explain to the FAA or whoever else, hey, this is why I decided to do this. I wanted to save the extra minute on the ground. Now, I've talked about landing too short at the very start of the runway and landing on the numbers. That's dangerous because if you come up short, you're hitting the grass or whatever's over there. And it's the same. Landing at the very, very end is dangerous. In order to save 1 or 2 minutes, it really makes no sense. And you can hear the pilot is not happy about it.
Why don't you leave me on the right side then?
And he doesn't get happier with the controller as the flight continues.
721 Foxtrot Lima, continue upwind 1 mile.
Upwind 1 mile, left or right?
I'll tell you to turn out. 721 Foxtrot Lima, make a right close traffic.
Right cruise.
For 721 Foxtrot Lima, make a left 360.
Left 360, 721 Foxtrot Lima. And Tyler, what's the purpose of the left 360 here?
Cessna 721 Foxtrot Lima, I have a heavy inbound, so I don't want to take you too far out on your downwind, so I'm trying to keep you close, sir.
You got 2 runways, right?
Caution, avoid turbulence.
The 360, what do you want me to do now, 1 Foxtrot Lima?
Traffic is 2 miles on the heavy Boeing 767 for traffic in sight base. Your discretion. Caution wake turbulence. Runway 16 left. Number 2 clear to land.
16 left. Number 2 clear to land. That made no sense at all for 1 Foxtrot Lima.
So this pilot that's flying in this smaller Cessna sounds like he knows what he's doing, sounds pretty competent, but just not happy at all with the way the controller is deciding to organize everything. But the controller, as he's seeing this plane, doesn't really know what the skill level of this pilot is, what they are aware of, what their abilities are, and he has a Boeing 767, which is a pretty large aircraft that's coming in to land. So he's responsible for keeping those planes separated out. He can't just trust that this pilot is going to make all the right decisions, because if that pilot were to do something, he's going to be questioned of, why did you let this pilot in this Cessna fly behind a Boeing 767 and then he get caught up in the dirty air of that 767 and end up crashing? So the controller has a responsibility, and what he's doing is making that plane do the 360 so he's not near that 767. So the 767 is planning to land here on 16 left, which is the same runway that this pilot in this Cessna is planning to land on. And the controller has two options. He obviously can't put him right behind that 767, so he can either extend him down a long way, so there's a couple of minutes of separation there, or he can have him do a 360, so he doesn't have to go that far away. So he's saying, do this 360 here, so that way you can stay close to the airport, because there's a lot of airspace that could be congested possibly in that area. So he's saying, do this 360, so that way you just do this 360, by the time you come back around, this 767 will be closer to land, and then you can just come back in. That's the controller's prerogative. If he wants to do that, then he can do that, and which is obviously what happened. If this 767 lands here on 16 left and the wind is blowing this way, or it's very calm, the pilot of this small Cessna landing on 16 right could end up in a lot of the disturbed air from the 767 and put him in a lot of danger. Now, I don't know if the wind is blowing at all or what direction it's blowing in, but the controller's making a decision to do this. And sometimes as a pilot, you just have to do what they're telling you to do unless it's really unsafe, which is not what the controller's not giving him something that's unsafe. He's just saying, hey, this is what I want you to do, and the pilot doesn't agree with it. But sometimes that's just the way it works out. You know, sometimes when I'm coming in to land, they decide to put a small plane ahead of me, and that small plane is going to be going really slow. And I think, like, really? Like, couldn't have I landed first? But it's their choice. You don't hear me get on the radio and go, no, not that guy. I want to go first. I don't want that guy to go first. No, that's not how it works. The controller's made the decision that that plane's going to go first, and they have to organize things and do their job the way they think is the safest for it to happen. And so I just let them do that, and now I have to take my 747 and fly super slow so some guy can come in and land in his plane, and it's annoying to me, but I just suck it up. This pilot has a different strategy though, and he says this.
That made no sense at all.
There's really no reason to say that. There's times where I would like to say something, and sometimes I do, but I take my finger off the button before I transmit it and I say it to the other pilot. There's no reason to transmit something like that because it's not going to win you any favors with the controller. And you can hear another pilot chime in here.
Come on, man.
But the controller gets the last laugh. Listen what happens here.
That's 715, verify. Yeah, the heavy Boeing 767 in flight.
I've got the driving site, 1 Foxtrot Lima.
Maintain visual separation from that traffic, caution wake turbulence, base your discretion.
Base minus dispersion for 16 left, 721 Foxtrot Lima. Be a long landing for wake turbulence.
Unable long landing, report visual separation.
Visual separation, then I'll have to land beyond his touchdown point, 721 Foxtrot Lima.
721 Foxtrot Lima, turn left taxi, Foxtrot, contact ground.
Left at Foxtrot, over to ground, 1 Foxtrot Lima. Last ground station here, 721 Foxtrot Lima, off at Foxtrot for AOC.
721 Foxtrot Lima, contact ground.
Last ground, 721 Foxtrot Lima, off at Foxtrot for AOC.
721 Foxtrot Lima, contact ground on 132.65.
So the pilot is asking for a long landing there, and the controller's saying, no, I'm not going to give you the long landing. And so then he says, okay, I need to land past the touchdown spot of a 767, which the controller really can't say no to. The reason not is because in a small plane like that, you have to land past where the wings are generating lift of the 767 because of that disturbed air. So the pilot says, well, I'm going to land past the touchdown point, which the controller is going to let him do. But if he'd been nice to the controller this whole time, the controller probably would have been like, yeah, cool, land long if that's really what you want to do. But the controller says this.
Unable long landing.
Pilots have something which is an active frequency, which you're currently talking on, and a standby frequency, which means when you're done talking, you hit this button and you go on to this new frequency. Every pilot has forgot to hit that button to go on to the new frequency. However, in this case, where the pilot is saying to the controller, like, you're not competent in your job, but then forgets to hit the button, I would imagine that his personality type is irritated with himself that he forgot to do it 2 times. If you enjoyed this video, you really enjoy one of these 2 here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.